it can be a back and forth of, well, will this time work, this date, this time, no, that won't work. What about this, all that stuff? We don't do that. I have a link, and everybody that's going to meet with me, if they ask for a meeting, I just send them the link. And it doesn't really put a burden on them. It makes it easier for them because they're not going back and forth either, right? So they can look in, they can say, oh, he's available on Tuesday the 7th at 7 a.m., and they book it. And it just shows up in my calendar. So that's part of this 20%. I know it's going to happen. I have it left so it'll fill up as this week continues and into next week. Then I go into personal education. So that's when I'm working on me. How do I become a better person, a more productive person, whatever? And then I leave about 3 hours a week or 5% for business education. So that's reading business books. And I generally do that stuff on Saturdays and Sundays. So that is how I thought about it. You could use any block you wanted, make up your own blocks, make up your own percentages, and then apply it to a calendar. So I go ahead and block it out. And I'm not rigid. If somebody calls me and says, John, I need to meet with you on Monday at 10 a.m., and it's just a regular block like this, I'm going to take the meeting and I'm going to do the meeting. And it happens all the time. But I try to live by this, because if I don't, this is the most important role that you play, is the leader. And it's so easy to take away from the leader because it goes to working in the business. And it's really hard to preserve that time for yourself, and it should be sacred. It's really tough to do, but that's why I recommend having a blocked out calendar so that you have a little bit more control, and also a reminder, hey, I'm supposed to be working on the business right now. I'm not supposed to be doing that other thing. I'm supposed to be working on the business. So that's that bit of it. The next thing I wanted to talk about are intermittent chat check-ins. So when you're running a group of people, we have about 32 folks that support us in what we do. I never see them. Some of the people have worked with us for over 10 years. I've never met them in person. I've met them a bunch in video, but never in person. And so in this remote work environment, it's really important to occasionally reach out. And I wouldn't do it every Thursday, but when you're thinking about it and you're seeing them do something, reach out and say, hey, how are you doing? Is there any way I could support you better? And see what that elicits. And if they start to talk about it in chat, then I usually recommend a video conference follow-up, because as you know, with video or with audio or chat, you're getting a limited part of what they're trying to communicate. If you open that up to video, you get so much more, right? You start to get into the 70, 80% of what they're trying to communicate to you. And by the way, it's convenient right now that we've gone to video and we're not touching, because when you think about the five senses, you really only need two, sight and sound, to be able to hear and see. That's all you need to do business work. You don't need to touch, really, right? We're learning that. We're not touching. Nobody's touching anybody right now. You certainly don't need to smell or taste, right? So I think you can get everything done from a video perspective. And, you can even get into things like if you want to continue and feel like a face-to-face meeting over lunch is important for your style of business, you can still do that in a really impactful way. So, for instance, if we're meeting with a client in Texas, we've got a 2-hour time differential. That means they're hungry when I'm not. So at 10 a.m., I'm not hungry, but I can say to them, hey, what's your favorite restaurant in San Antonio, if that's where they are? And they tell me that restaurant. I can probably still, maybe not, but maybe be able to get that delivered, right? So that's delivered to their home. And all of a sudden they get this, I'm not traveling, so my cost is way down. I can afford to have a fairly extravagant lunch delivered to them from their favorite place with a line item, the items that they wanted. They're eating, I'm presenting. And it's almost everything that a regular meeting is, without the awkwardness of talking while your food gets cold and you've got a full meal and they're just eating away. So anyway, take that for whatever it's worth. Okay, the last and most important part of the of the remote leader concept is creating the objective chain. And you'll notice that I put in a poll, and I'm just trying to get a feeling for, do you feel really like the objectives are nailed down for your organization? And generally what I see is it's mixed bag. Some people have really concrete organizational objectives that then flow down into the functional areas, that flow down to the team level, and flow finally to the individual level as a task, and some don't. And you can kind of see it over here. And this is the subject where I'm going to dive a lot deeper into this on the 13th of this month in one of these sessions. But you can see that happening. This is a set of organizational objectives. Then those cascade down into the functional objectives. So what's finance going to do to contribute? What about HR? What about marketing? What about sales? What about operations? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever the functional areas are in your company. And then at a functional level, they have to think about, okay, what do I need to have my team leads do? So if it's marketing as an example, you might have a email marketing team lead. You might have a social media, search engine optimization, those kinds of leads. And each one of them needs a set of objectives that are given to them. And then they agree, yes, I accept this. And for each team lead, they've got team members. And they're now going to pass down individual tasks. And if you gather all these things up at the individual level, you should have the level above it, the team task or team objectives should get accomplished. If all the team objectives get accomplished throughout your organization, that means all of the functional objectives get accomplished. And if all the functional objectives get accomplished, obviously all the organizational objectives get accomplished, and everybody's happy. You do really well for that quarter, year, however you measure it. So objective change are important, and without it, people are lost. So especially true in a remote work environment. If they don't have a task, because in a regular corporate environment, we've all heard management by wandering around, right? I think MBWA or something like that, management by wandering. Yeah. And it really worked well. You could walk around and see people. The reason you were encouraged to do it is you would have interaction. Hey, what are you working on today? Well, I'm working on this. And then you could think as the manager, that's not in alignment with where we need to go. And you could say to them, well, you know what? Hey, why don't you put that on pause? I'm glad you've been doing that, but I'd like to have you pivot over to this and start doing this. If you could get this thing, whatever I'm explaining, done by X time, that would be great. That was kind of the management by wandering around. And you pick up things as they talk to you about problems and issues that come up with it. In the remote world, you don't have that function, and that's not happening. So you need to be very clear about that objective chain and be clear about the tasks that you're going to provide to folks so that they understand what they're to do. And each task has a start and end date. It has an amount of time that's expected. It has a thorough description of what's expected to be done. And it also might indicate any dependencies, right? So that I know that in order for me to do my work that starts tomorrow, as I prepare today for that, this other person has to finish their task today. And it might even encourage me to use the chat system, right? I'm not sure we talked about chat yet, but we did a little bit. So we'd use the chat system to jump in and they could say, hey, are you going to be done with that? Because I'm supposed to pick that. I need your work product for me to be able to move forward with my stuff tomorrow. And so it encourages that kind of collaboration between all of us that are doing actual physical work that results in the company getting its objectives accomplished. So that is the remote leader. I'm going to pause for a second and then just allow you. Oh, one more thing before I do that. The E-Myth Revisited. So that book is referenced down there. Excellent book, especially if you're a small business. It's good for any kind of business. Bigger businesses tend to get things like hashing out the roles and writing down and agreeing to roles if you have multiple people involved in your organization, right? So small businesses sometimes fail in that they have conflict between who's really doing the job of the CEO or not, right? What's it mean to do the CEO, have the CEO role? And so it has a little bit of that going on. But the part that generally gets me, that you'll hear me talk a little bit more about as we get into the remote manager, is that if I'm left to my own, if I'm stressed, I tend to fall back to what Michael Gerber calls the technician role. I know that I can do certain things. So I might go out and stress can happen a number of ways. We're all under stress right now because of the current environment. Stress can be that I didn't do a good job of explaining a task to somebody, and now there's no time for them to do it because I don't have time to explain it and get it on their calendar. It wouldn't be fair to them. So now I have to do it. And so now I've forced myself to move from a leadership role back to a technician role. And so that time that we've talked about, that's precious, sacred time, is now squandered because I didn't do a good job on the manager side, and I'm now the technician. I'm back into working in the business, even though I wanted to be working on it. So the E-Myth covers those kinds of concepts. It's an older book. Michael Gerber's still active and going out there, and he's written a few things. He's got a couple of new online resources available for people. If you don't know him, get to know him. That book is great. My business partner and I read it every year, and we challenge ourselves, are we still doing what Michael Gerber told us to do in the E-Myth? Because it's really valid stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to pause. Do you have any questions on the remote leader?
No.
Okay, so no questions. Great. We're going to move on to the remote manager. So this one's about discipline. And in the end of the day, you're moving into a world where you got to have the discipline to get up out of bed in the morning. Nobody's really watching, right? So there's no, hey, I saw you pull in at 7:04 and you're supposed to be here at 7. I mean, it's up to you. And the energy that you're going to put forth, you're going to have to be a self-starter on that, right? And that's a part of discipline. If you're going to decide, and you should, to use a project management system, which in here I say everybody must use your project management system. Not a project management system, but the one that you select as an organization. You've got to be on that. It used to be the world of just IT. And by the way, as you move through this process, if you've got IT people in your organization, lean on them. They've been doing and setting up processes and procedures for 20, 30 years on how to be remote workers, and they're very good at it. So you can lean on those people. But they always have a project management system, always. And most of us in the rest of business don't. But everything's a project, like we talked about. There's an objective. It cascades down to an individual task for somebody to do. And you should be thinking about each of those tasks and saying, is this related to an objective above it? And if it's not, why am I doing it? And if the answer is because it's important to do, then you need to talk to somebody up the chain and say, hey, I think this is important, and get agreement before you go do it. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing it, and you'll be off, and everybody will be on different pages and it won't work. The project management system is designed to keep you on the same page and working as a team, not as a bunch of individuals going in different directions. Okay, so discipline. I think you get that. The first thing you can do, and this is kind of from a leader's perspective and fulfilling the role of manager, okay? And so for me, what that generally means is a leader says, here's where we're going to go. A manager helps them get there. And the way a manager generally has done it is by talking to people and getting them organized around a set of tasks and things to do to pull that off. Now, the manager's role is different in that they have this thing called a project management system that they can really rely on to do a lot of that. The management by wandering around we talked about, it's now done by a system. They're just making sure the system has the right inputs and it's clear. So the first thing you can do is make a list of repetitive projects. As an example, for our world, they call it SEO, or search engine optimization, right? That is a kind of project that we do all the time. And we've broken it down to 28 individual tasks that have to happen. And then you'll see the next thing below that is determine what type of resource is required for each task. They're different. So I don't need to have the kind of person that might be doing high-level SEO strategy, search engine optimization strategy, doing some of the, building the folders and setting up the documents that are required to put that strategy in. That can be done by an administrative person. And obviously, the cost differential is different. So you have to get smart about the repetitive tasks. You have to think about who's going to be doing them. You have to think about what's the average time, not what I could do it as an expert. What do I expect people to be able to do it in? And you need to be able to put that into a system and monitor it so that at the end of a year, you can look back, or 6 months or whatever, look back and say, of all the people that do that work, what's the average time, and who do I have as the outliers, and why are they either super fast or super slow? So I can have a conversation to either learn or to coach. right? So it's really good to set those kinds of things up and understand each task. Once you have that down, you're in a great position to build an online university. I don't care how